Commodore stood gaping at the astropathic choir as they related their messages. Things were always complicated when anything involved the warp. The astropaths had been instructed to be extra careful in the last days. For good reason. The Commodore winced as they projected images into his mind. He saw visions that were not his, not theirs, sent from somewhere out in the galaxy. That is how telepathic choirs worked. One would send out information, another would receive it. But one could never be certain how they had been changed. It was like sending a message through a hall of mirrors and hoping it to be almost understandable on the other side. The Commodore winced again as the images became more solid. "I see," he said. "A message. An image. I see a word. A word from our sponsors! Yes, this video is actually sponsored by World of Warships. Let's have a look. The Horus heresy is not over. By the blessings of the dark gods, we move through the warp to another time, an earlier terror, where we can win the long war 28,000 years before it began. I, Captain Arthas Rogthar the Cold, act as forerunner on my vessel, Ragnarok, and we bellow our war cry for the first time in this era. Blood for the Blood God! Skulls for the Skull Throne! This world, this Earth, will be ours. The scum have fled through time, but ever are we on their heels. We will never tire in our hunt. They seek to dominate an innocent time, the Earth of ancient antiquity. With the guidance of the Emperor, we follow them through time and match our strength to theirs. I, Captain Justinian Leons XIII, and mighty Ignis Perditio will send these vile traitors straight back to hell. For the Emperor. World of Warships and World of Warships Legends. The Thinking Man's strategy game has gone into collaboration with Warhammer 40k. It's time to take the battle to the seas. A beautiful game with weather effects that truly alter the gameplay, and sumptuous visuals that immerse you entirely. It's a rare feast of thrilling action that favours the man with a plan. Just look at it. It's gorgeous. Its historic recreations of some of the most famous of all ships is second to none, adding more to the experience. Detail. If you use the invite codes in the description of this video, you will gain 30 doubloons, 7 days of premium play, 1 million credits, premium ship Ishizuchi, and multiple camouflages for Imperial or traitorous statues. Invite codes for World of Warships Legends on console will gain you Tier 2 Premium Destroyer USS Smith, 3 days of premium time, and 75,000 credits. It's free, so if you need a fun distraction worthy of the name, download World of Warships today and make your own mark on the Horus heresy. See what I did there? Heresy. World of Warships. Give it a go today. And thank you for your patience there. Okay, funny as it is, YouTube does have some costs, and I do need to eat. Also, with 9th coming up, this will cost to gain the most up-to-date information. So just know that adverts won't be the norm, despite there being two recently. This one is something I definitely thought you would want to have a look at. Basically, for the show to go on, the servant sometimes needs to get a win. For a servant without pay is a slave, and we don't want that, do we? Now, on to the story proper. The second message was of more use. It was simple, well, as simple as any message that has been through the warp. But what did we understand? Danger is coming, but help is on the way. We'd heard of strikes all over the region, while the Navy was embroiled in operations up and down the area. Hard fighting. We knew. We saw what state they came back in, as we were a relay and repair station, a staging ground for the fleet. So much combat recently. Not a day passed without new ships arriving or leaving. It was when we finally refitted and resupplied Battle Group Ashen Strike, and they had finally left the system, that the enemy struck. Sleek and nimble Xenos vessels, they seemed to come out of nowhere. They struck hard, crippling our sensors and defenses in successive over or under the station. Capital ships docked to us were also hit, The Emperor's Ire, an old but much-needed cruiser, was mauled. Its escorts were all but gutted, pinpoint fire coming from the Xenos ships with unerring accuracy. We were now sitting ducks. It was then that our choir informed us that help had arrived. Long-range augers detected but 5 ships coming out from the jump node. Only 5. Our scanners could not discern their models then, but the moment of elation that the crew had felt at the arrival of support soon dwindled. The Xenos were too many, too fast. 5 ships would not help. An element of the Xenos flotilla cut off and began to speed towards our rescuers, but when they got closer, they immediately broke off and ran as fast as they could back to the main body of the fleet. We were utterly bemused until the augurs began to cogitate, now that they were getting closer. A wave of attack craft came from the main vessel. Then, of course, we knew. It could only be an Emperor-class battleship. The other 4 ships, its meager escorts. It didn't really need them. The Xenos Admiral sent attack craft to meet those launched by our Navy, but they were outnumbered, and our escorts cut those that got past our pilots into ribbons. The group just ploughed onwards, the main vessel accepting Xenos fire onto its massive void shield arrays. Nothing penetrated. It hit its own range and fire erupted from the battleship. Many Xenos vessels evaded its cannon, but some did not. Any ship hit was torn to pieces or melted to scrap in seconds. And just as swiftly as it began, it seemed to be over. The Xenos turned tail and fled, disappearing into their hidden warp node. Indeed, this day, through the aegis of his namesake, the Emperor protects. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and fun of the Warhammer 40k universe. Today, we will take our first tentative baby steps into the wide arena of warships, the space vessels of battle that litter the visual lexicon that is so strikingly Warhammer, the grim darkness of the future. This will be the most basic of introductions, as over time we shall explore the true horror of these vessels, the many ways that people die just to maintain them, just to keep them going, the terror of their weaponry and the strangeness of their shielding and defences, their overall design and uses compared to the delicate balletic grace of other universes. But, just for the fun of it, I thought we would kick off with battleships today. Why not, after all? Now, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, "A battleship is a type of warship that is the largest and most powerful available to any spacefaring military fleet. The battleship is the master of space combat. These massive spacecraft are protected by nigh impenetrable defences, carrying enough firepower to obliterate a lesser warship, and usually have launch bays for attack craft as well. The only weaknesses of a battleship are its expense and poor manoeuvrability. However, when accompanied by cruisers and escorts to offset these disadvantages, a battleship becomes a nearly unstoppable addition to any fleet. The conduct of the Great Crusade required these vessels by the thousands. Vessels that could not only carry armies and bring apocalyptic destruction to bear, but that could also endure the perilous transit of warp space, and endure the titanic forces and hardships of the Imperium and the deep void both. Military vessels were needed, not only to replace losses, but to meet the ever-expanding demands of the expeditionary fleets, the Armada Imperialis, and, on a lesser scale, the rogue traders and local navies. To satisfy this constant need, a bewildering variety of classes of warship were developed to fulfill an equally bewildering variety of roles. The principal or capital class of warship in the Great Crusade and the mainstay of the Imperial fleets was the battleship, with more than 1,000 such mighty engines of war in operation at the height of the Imperium's expansion. They were intended to form the line of battle during fleet engagements and have armaments capable of smashing continents from orbit and controlling entire star systems by force of arms. Battleships are vast constructs, ranging commonly between 8 and 12 kilometers long, although some far larger vessels have been constructed, and can hold tens of thousands of crew, troops and hundreds of war machines, as well as swarms of smaller attack craft depending on their design. Battleships were only threatened in ordinary circumstances by others of their own type, and direct celestial phenomena like warp storms, and as such were the mainstay of both the expeditionary fleet and the wider Armada Imperialis. End quote. To give you just an idea of how many different types of battleship there are for us to go over in the future, I'm just going to take 2 seconds to quickly list them. Imperial, Dictatus, Dominus, Gloriana, a personal favourite, Goliath, Infernus, Ironclad, Mortis Rex, Tiamat, Ascension, Torrent, and Majestic class battleships. Also, Victory class, Apocalypse class, Emperor class, like from the story, Invincible, Nemesis, Oberon, Retribution, and Vanquisher class. Also, the Adeptus Mechanicus have a class of vessel which is as large if not larger than any other battleship, called an Arch Mechanicus. Chaos battleships include Abyss class, Desolator class, Despoiler class, and Planet Killer. And of course, any of the above Imperial classes that then go rogue. The Eldar have their Voidstalker, and the Necrons have their Cairn class battleships. Orcs too have battleships, although putting classes on them may not really be relevant. The Tau have their Goliath Explorer class battleship, and the Demiurge have their Stronghold class commerce vessels and their Bastion class commerce vessels, both tending to be approximately the size of battleships. Battleships. Those fortresses that epitomize the thoroughly OTT element of Warhammer. Some of the puniest are over 8 kilometers long, with baroque crenellations, pulpits and insignia dripping off them. The Imperial Navy is more akin to flying cathedrals, huge bastions of not only technological and martial power, but also of faith itself. And in the Warhammer 40k universe, faith does count for a lot. But it is the striking imagery, the impressive lines and squared, unlovely build that bring about the most powerful images of the majesty and the might of the Imperium. For sleek lines and a truly futuristic feel, one must look to the Xenos races, the Eldar, Drukhari, Tau, and Necrons. And the sheer scale of them is unlike any other universe. Hilariously so, if I am honest, but still dramatically, if you are willing to play along and, as with so much of Warhammer, agree to suspend your disbelief to share in the collective vision. I mean, one of the main tactics in Warhammer is moving to ramming speed. Boom, boom, ramming speed. Yes, many a ship is designed to, as a last resort, to ram the enemy vessels. This is just, of course, hilarious. Quintessentially, the fleet battles of the Warhammer universe are based more around the Great Age of Sail and the Royal Navy. Lines of ships flying towards one another and pounding each other with weaponry that can crack moons and annihilate atmospheres of planets. More of a slugging match than the usual fare of sci-fi, where fast, nimble ships nip in and out and spin about. No, this is Warhammer. There are fighters and assault craft, to be sure, but in the grim darkness of the future, the real power in a navy comes from its ships of the line. And most fleets engage in an echelon formation, with escorts being on the exterior to provide support for the larger vessels from the waves of fighters and assault craft. Next in would be the frigates and the cruisers. These vessels providing fire, but in large fleet actions their attrition rate is scarcely lower than that of the escort class vessels. The next line is the real power, the battleships. These Goliaths are now seen less than of days of yore. During the Great Crusade, much of the Xenos fleets were smashed by the grinding power of the Imperium, while it was at its height and was commanded by the Emperor and his sons, the Primarchs. But even the Imperium is now a shadow of its power, as the Horus heresy destroyed much of not only the legions of the Astartes, the Space Marines, and the Titanicus, the god machines of the Adeptus Mechanicus, it also reaped an incredible toll from the Navy, as the void battles of that ghastly era were ever as bitterly fought as any planet-side. Thus, having destroyed much of the Xenos naval strength, the Imperium went into self-destruct mode and burnt itself down. Now the sight of a battleship is hardly rare in any fleet engagement, but they are more the command vessels and less the main battle line that they used to be. The heresy also sent humanity into a degenerative spiral downwards towards ignorance. meaning that the Mechanicum lose more and more knowledge with each passing year, and thus the ships that they can produce may be every bit as large and threatening as their ancestors of the Great Crusade or of the Dark Age of technology, but they are simply not the same. Their secondary systems are less developed, less technical, their engines less efficient, their scanners less precise, their weaponry still devastating, but not a shadow of its previous might. As the Necrons rise from their tombs, they activate more and more of their fleets, and the larger ships, the Cairn-class battleships, are becoming more common. The Eldar are a dying race, but some powerful factions of them are preparing to go out with a bang instead of a whimper. Never forget that the Corsairs that strike the shipping lanes of all and sundry are actually the remnants of the old Eldari fleet, a fleet that once ruled the Milky Way galaxy for millions of years, so they should never be taken lightly. Thus, these aggressive elements of the craft world Eldar are still a real and present danger. The Drukhari may previously have only raided into real space, but with the fragility of the existence of Khorne and the impending invasion of the Webway, their home, by the Necrons, who are again created Dolmen Gates, their way of ripping portals into the Webway, will the Drukhari, the Dark Eldar, be forced to return to real space lock, stock and barrel? If so, then their own fleet elements may be horrors to engage. The Tau may have a meager navy now, but they progress at a rate that is truly terrifying to any on their borders. At present their ships can hold their own. In only a few scant 100 years, if they are not put down, the Tau may wrestle control of the stars through the strength of their fleet and advanced tech alone. Space combat is an element of the Warhammer universe that has not been as developed, if I am honest. Battlefleet Gothic, the miniatures game which presented these huge fleet actions, may have been consumed by the foulness. But with computer games like Battlefleet Gothic coming out, there is some small hope that the specialist games and wonderful, beautiful models they generated may yet return one day. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you have enjoyed this introduction to battleships in the grim darkness of the future. If so, then do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notification button, as I would not want you to miss out. A huge thank you to the sponsor of this video, World of Warships and World of Warships Legends, and congratulations on their crossover with Warhammer 40k. The Emperor is pleased, I would imagine. Do check out the links in the description. But have no fear. We shall return to the makes, models and armaments, shields and armor of the navies of the grim darkness of the future as time goes by. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo. End quote.